Hi everyone. So I'm British, as you can probably tell from my accent, and I was trying to think before I came on stage about what some of the connections could be between Denmark and Britain, and I thought to myself, well, if I was our very recent Prime Minister in the UK, and don't worry, I won't talk about him too much, he'd probably say, Britain was built on bacon. And as a meat eater, I think I can easily say that I've had a lot of Danish bacon in time, and given the subject of food systems, I think it's also an appropriate thing to talk about. But I also want to talk about another thing today, because if you look at my surname, you'll see that it's Greek. And this word here, oh dear, it fell off. That actually means truth. So, which is a bit worrying, because maybe symbolically, truth is starting to fall apart a bit today. So nevertheless, what I will try and do is talk to you about the truth today. Aletheia, the truth. So I work at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. We're a global CEO-led non-profit. We represent 200 member companies. We support those companies to meet the Sustainable Development Goals. Ultimately, what we want is for sustainable businesses to be the most successful businesses. And we work with them pre-competitively to address big transformation and big system issues. How do we decarbonize the energy system? What is a successful and sustainable mobility sector? How do we enable a circular economy? Now, of course, on this topic, food and climate, the food system has come very strongly onto the agenda recently. We've been working with 70 companies on agriculture, food and climate change since actually 2015. We worked very closely with CCAFS, with Bruce and the team on this. And we've been working along the whole value chain. We're working with agri-businesses, with soft commodity traders, with big food brands, retailers, but also banks and technology companies. We've seen huge progress on the global agenda for food systems transformation. And last year really was a year of the alarm bells being rung. From the IPCC land report, the Eat Lancet report looking more at the consumption and diet side, the IPBES report on biodiversity, the Food and Land Use Coalition. These have helped define an agenda for food systems transformation. But they've also caused a lot of disruption, a lot of confusion, and potentially conflict between the stakeholders of whom we all are in this space. So what I want to talk about today, apart from just the truth, is accountability and clarity in terms of what business should be doing in this space. Now, business is accepting and must accept its role in contributing to the big climate issues that we see today. That's a given. We're seeing this change with companies now setting net zero targets across all sectors, including the food sector. These are things that are happening. We're also seeing solutions coming from how to shift the agricultural sector from a source of emissions to an overall sink of emissions. The critical role, as Andrew talked about, of proteins in the livestock space, very relevant, of course, for Denmark, but also for the rest of the world on things like paddy rice. The importance of the incentives that you need to actually get there. Now, to create the accountability that business must bring to that agenda, we've done a lot of work at WBCSD to make sure we clarify that. We want to make sure there's a positive and empowering role for everyone in this space. So what we need to do is ultimately frame what the ambition should be. What are the pathways and the solutions that are available? What are the risks today for businesses and for everyone, but what are the opportunities if we get it right? So I'm going to talk about two areas of guidance that we've done a lot of work on, which hopefully will add a bit to the conversations which are going on today. First is strategic guidance in the leadership space to help set the agenda. So last year we published at the end of the year the CEO Guide to Food Systems Transformation. It took us nearly a year to put this guide together. It's very short because CEOs, as you know, don't have a lot of time, so we want to make sure they can read it quickly. There's a lot of research behind it. We interviewed 40 executives as we put this together. They were from across the whole agricultural value chain. They included consumer brands, they included wider stakeholders in civil society and in academia. And it was all about forming a joint agenda for CEO-level leadership and action in this space. And as we did that, we looked to define a few things. One was, we talk about food systems transformation. What are we trying to get to? We defined it across 5 key areas. The climate space, and you've heard very clearly from the other speakers that it has to be about mitigation and adaptation. Nature and biodiversity. Rural livelihoods, which must of course include the role of farmers. Healthy people and the health and nutrition agenda. And in the middle, of course, for our businesses, effective businesses, productive businesses, playing their role there. So we also provided guidance for what the pathways should be to actually get there. And we talked about that in 2 ways. We said there should be direct pathways. There should be things that business gets on with first. Those are transforming agriculture, looking at innovation of the agricultural system that we're hearing about, but also restoring the environment at the same time, restoring our forests, our soils, our water resources. Equitable distribution of value. I think all of us would agree, whoever drinks a cup of coffee, that it's a disgrace that farmers don't get enough money for the produce that is grown. I mean, they feed us, they sustain us, and yet we know that value is not equitably distributed across the value chain in the right way right now. We must tackle more healthy and sustainable diets in the system, and that's been a big topic of debate, of course, from the Eat Lancet, but we must also tackle food loss and waste. The second area is in the enabling pathways. What are the things we need to do to actually enable the types of partnerships at scale that we're hearing about? Well, those are around 3 things. We need end-to-end transparency. We need companies to be able to measure and monitor these things, and I'll talk a bit about targets in a second. We need clear policy and finance. So our businesses, we work with them pre-competitively. We're going to the UNFCCC. We're going to the UN Convention to Combat Desertification. We're involved in the Global Food Systems Summit to talk about the agenda that business would like to see in order to be able to competitively operate in this new paradigm environment of food systems transformation. And importantly, that has to be about new business models and collaborations to get there. So I think we're going to hear all about those things more today. The second area that I want to talk about, following on from that guide, and to talk about the target setting that's really important. We are releasing our Climate Smart Agriculture Smarter Metrics guide next week. We've been working with a lot of colleagues in CCAFs and other organizations, SIAT as well, to develop smarter metrics for business. We need to help companies work together to understand how to set these targets. It's incredibly complicated. So we need to make sure they understand the methods and the landscape for doing that. So we're going to be doing that next week, and we're excited, and we urge you to come and collect this from me actually afterwards, because you can join the webinar and we can talk about it more. We need to see that acceleration towards science-based targets, towards the setting of science-based targets in that space. We're working quite strongly there, disclosure being important. Disclosure under the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosure is critical as well. Business has to disclose to investors its risks and therefore be rewarded for being a more sustainable business, lower cost of capital, quicker access to markets that they need in this transformation. So looking forwards, the food systems transformation, we must partner more widely. We need to see that. For the first time in 2021, we have the global community coming together for the Food Systems Summit. That's going to be absolutely critical. We're pushing on an open door on food systems transformation, but we have to work together if we're going to do it. And we've got to find a blueprint for how to do that, so we can get things working at scale. Thanks a lot.